So we'll first start with a quick intro to Raaj Yog and what it's based on. Then get into the process as defined by Raaj Yog. Create like a short summary, and then of course the application and nidhi rehasal. So getting into introduction, I think it's important to know where principal text or where all this, a lot of the information is coming from. There are four. There's a fifth one on Hatha Yoga, which we haven't mentioned. So the four are the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, which will go a little bit more deeper in, because that's the principal text for Raaj Yoga. There are Yoga Vashisht Sutras. This is a very big text. In fact, there is a larger version which has a 50,000, a very large number, and there is a smaller version of Yoga Vashisht also. They have selected some verses. A large part of it, or I think this is primarily a dialogue between Rishi Vashisht and Ramchandra ji. So this is Ram of Ramayana. His guru was Vashisht Guru, and it's a dialogue between them, and it also centers a lot around yoga that way. The last two, Hatha Yoga Pradipika, Gherand Samhita, and there are a couple more which are focused on Hatha Yoga. That's also a term I'm sure people have come across, and I think we'll briefly talk about how they are different or same as well, both Raaj Yoga and Hatha Yoga. So right up front, what is yoga as per Raaj Yoga? So what's the definition that comes out from these texts? So we'll look at what Patanjali says, which we've, I think, briefly discussed, but essentially he says yoga, chitta, vritti, nirodha. Right? So this is the second sutra, in fact, in the first chapter. So upfront itself, in their sort of classical style, they define what is yoga. So yoga is the nirodh of the vrittis of chit. So I'm just changing the grammar, rearranging the Sanskrit grammar, but keeping the words the same. So what is it? Yog is the nirodh of the vrittis of chit. Okay. So three words which become very critical are what is chit, vritti, and nirodh. Correct? To understand those. So chit, in what we have seen from earlier, we can say as a combination of Manomaya Kosha and Vijnanamaya Kosha, essentially. So its chitta is a combination of whatever is a lot that is happening internal, and it's all three together. And this is a word which is quite used differently in different philosophies also. So we'll come across the 6 darshanas. So there's the Sankhya Yoga, Vaisheshika, Nyaya, Vedant. So this particular word is used differently in different philosophical context as well. So when we look at Yoga Sutras or the Yoga philosophy, which is what Raaj Yoga is about, we will look at it from what their understanding is. So what does Sankhya and Yoga see as Chit? So for them, Chit is all the mental stuff. When we look at Vedanta, it will define Chit in a slightly quite differently. It can define the word Chitta. But the Yoga philosophy is defined in this context. So we use Chitta in that way. I know on the group there was something around, I think, how Sadhguru has also defined it. And people do define it differently. So that's Chitta, which is our Manomaya and Vijnanamaya. Right? So what are the vrittis? Vrittis of the Chit. Right? So vrittis are essentially modifications, or which are driven primarily by rajas. So from our again going back to the Triguna, the field, rajas is a big point. In fact, the role of rajas, if you remember, was activation. Correct? It's what gives energy. So this is what creates modifications. Of course, there is and we'll come to that why that is important, but the word, in fact, for defining rajas uses pravritti, which is something before that comes before vritti. So rajas is like the source of all vrittis. The other thing about the word vritti is it also comes from the word vrit, which means a circle. So a lot of these, they understand the modifications of the mental stuff is circular also. So there is a pattern. We'll keep seeing that it repeats, and as we repeat those, it gets reinforced. And I think that's what modern psychology is also coming to understand now. So vritti is modifications, and vritti is primarily, the source is rajas, and I'll come to tamo guna also, the other gunas, how they play. And last is nirodh. So this is a very important word because this means effortless stoppage or cessation. So it happens automatically. This is not virodh, right? That is important to know. This is not virodh. This is not that I forcefully stop it. This is, it comes automatically. This is the natural state of being for it to reach that cessation, right? So it is when we sort of use up our gunas, and that is where tamas becomes very important. So when we see this, we might say, in tamas also, actually, like we said, extremes are similar. In tamas also, there will be a stoppage of a lot of vrittis. We might feel very calm when we are lazy, just lazing around. But that's not nirodh, that's virodh. So that happens when we stop. So in some way suppress it, try to forcefully control it, right? So that is the difference between reaching a state where there is nirodh, where the modifications, the vrittis of the chitta reach nirodh, which is automatic cessation on their own. So that's then the sort of a definition of yoga comes as, it is the effortless stoppage or cessation of the modifications of the mental stuff. There are prime, and we'll come to how from tamas we will need rajas to get out of tamas, but eventually we have then to migrate it not back to tamas but to sattva. So sattvic, as we get more and more sattva guna in our life, it reaches more and more closer to yoga. And as all the rajas, all the tamas get spent, this cessation will happen. You don't have to make it happen, it happens then on its own. It's the natural way of being. Yeah, that's the state we reach. So this is the definition from Patanjali as per the state. What is the yogic state? The second definition comes from Yog Vasisht, from his sutras, and that says Mana Prashamana Upaya Yoga. Mana Prashamana Upaya Yoga. This is coming from Yog Vasisht. So what does this translate? Grammatically, that Yog is an upaya to prashamana my mana, right? So again, just keeping these three words the same, the grammar is Yog is an upaya for prashamana my mana. So what do these three words mean? So mana is again mind stuff. It's a combination, just like chitta. So very similar there. Prashamana is calming the mind. So there is a certain pleasantness to the mind, reaching a state of pleasantness, of calmness in the mind. And upaya, I think people who know Hindi will know that it's like a skill, a technique, a process, if you may, right? So this is a definition of yoga as a process also. So it comes in the same scriptures, yogic scriptures. In fact, very interestingly, Yog Vasisht, one of the sutras is exactly this, Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. So Vasisht also, you can say, borrowed or kept this because this was also a very clear definition. So this appears in Yog Vasisht sutras as well. So Yog Vasisht combines both. But these are the two definitions, primarily two definitions that are there in the yogic text of what yoga is. One is as a state and one is as a process. There is a certain similarity to it. So based on this, what will we say the whole unit? Now going back to our framework, right? The whole unit was where Vigyanmay Kosh, the experience of this state in the Vigyanmay Kosh, how does it happen? So what, in our experience, what came out when we try to access this was silence. Silence, right? So that's the whole unit that is there. So when our mind gets to that state of calmness, prashamana, or there is less vitris as we go more and more towards chitta vritti being nirod, there is silence. And as I share this, I want all of you to just take some time, let's say a minute, stay in silence very consciously, try and reflect on how we started the session today uh, with Garima. What silence meant to you? I'll take some time. Just see how silence, how do you experience silence? How is it for you? Explore how this silence feels in your body. Explore the silence in your sensations, in your prana, in your energy. Explore how your silence is in your mind. Whenever you feel okay, you can come back to the class, open your eyes and come back.